Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis, the New York Republican, sits on the House Transportation Infrastructure Committee. Congressman, what do you think of where this is all going right now? Neither side, progressives or moderates of the Democratic Party, appear to have gotten what they wanted right off the bat, but I would have to think that the progressives are feeling a little more cocky than are the moderates. So where are Republicans in this?
Well, I think this demonstrates, the failure to bring this bill to the floor demonstrates that Nancy Pelosi and President Biden have kowtowed to the socialist wing of the party. And I think that's the reason why you're seeing so many things fail in this country right now, whether it be, the economic issues that we're facing, the inflation, the labor shortages, what's happening at the border, what happened in Afghanistan. A lot of it has to do because they cannot govern when they're allowing the socialist wing of the party to dictate everything.
So for Republicans, the president made a reference to the approaching debt ceiling, and the fact that technically we run out of money as a country on October 18th. I know there's wiggle room there, but when he said they do the right thing, what do you think he was saying?
I don't know. I think he's once again not being honest with the American people. Look, there was an extender that was passed which carried the President Trump budget forward for a couple of months to hold things over. The real issue becomes, where are they going to go with this $3.5 trillion package? In there are major increases in taxes, major intrusion in government control into your life, reporting every transaction over $600 in your bank account, doubling the number of IRS agents. I mean, talk about Big Brother. And then you have the entitlements in there, the welfare expansion without even work requirements. And this would be really detrimental to the economy. Doing the right thing would have been to push forward with the bipartisan infrastructure bill and bring it to the floor and call the bluff of the socialists and tell them that they aren't going to hijack something that was generally very good for America and would have really focused on true infrastructure, the roads, the bridges, the coastal resiliency, flood mitigation, sewer systems, ferries, transit, the things that we actually need and what Americans pay taxes for. What they're doing is neglecting the things that people actually pay taxes for. National security, public safety, look what they're doing at the border and the defund the police movement. They're neglecting these things that people expect in return for tax dollars, and they're moving down a path of socialism, which is extraordinarily detrimental and will change the course of this country forever if they are successful. We have to stop it.
Congressman, you're talking about the support that this had, the bipartisan support that this had among Republicans. Certainly 19 Republican senators voted for it in that body. How many of your colleagues, Republican colleagues, do you think would have supported this? It might still come for a vote. We don't know when. It's not anytime soon, clearly. But how many do you think would vote for this? Would you vote for this?
Well, I was inclined to vote for it. And again, I always say inclined because you never know what form it's actually going to come to the floor and if they try to tie something else to it. I would say that you probably had somewhere between a dozen or 2 dozen Republican votes in hand. And I think that was part of President Biden's failure here to not reach out to the Republicans to confirm how each of us was going to vote, to see if they had the votes to make up for the socialist squad and the progressives holding back. And again, you can't call it a bipartisan infrastructure bill if it doesn't get bipartisan votes. And so I think that was a real mistake on behalf of the president, but shows once again that he wasn't honest with the American people when he said he wanted to work in a bipartisan fashion. Instead, they're allowing the socialists to drive the bus. And this is a dangerous mistake. The things that they're proposing, I mean, you can point to many countries around the world, including Venezuela, which Hugo Chavez had a lot of those same initiatives, socialized medicine, as well as free education in his platform. And now look, 75% of Venezuela is in extreme poverty as a result. You just run out of other people's money.
All right, we'll watch it very closely. Congresswoman Malliotakis of New York. Again, an interesting insight there on the part of the Congresswoman to say that, there would probably be maybe a dozen, maybe as many as 2 dozen Republican votes for this infrastructure-only package. We simply don't know. But even with that math, it's interesting that this was all shelved. Even allowing for up to 24 Republicans voting for this, the prospect of all the progressives, I think there are close to 40 of them who might opt out and not vote for it, had to be weighed. And that was enough for the president to say, just cut it. It's over.